Do you see a scenario where the Mets start Acuna at second if he has a great spring? So this is the ultimate domino effect, Joe, because if Pete Alonso is back, it's kind of easy to say Mark Vientos is going to play third. Pete Alonso is going to play first. A guy named Francisco Lindor is going to play shortstop. And then you could have a pretty narrow conversation about second base, which we will in just one moment. And I think that's the conversation to stick to. But if Pete is not back, at least at the start of spring training, and Vientos is playing first, and then you're looking at third base being really wide open, they're going to give Brett Beatty a big look. We'll see where Mauricio is at health-wise. We'll keep the conversation the way it has, that we think Pete will be back, because we have said on the Mets pod for many, many months that we think Pete will be back. I don't know if this is open for Acuna, Joe. I think it would take a really special spring for this to be in consideration. It just seems like the Mets are going forward with Jeff McNeil getting a lot of time at second base, and it would be really surprising to see them just go, you know what? We're moving on to Acuna, and Jeff, you're going to be totally off the bench. That's a scenario to me, Joe, that only happens if McNeil bombs out the first 2 months of the season and you just need something else from second base.
Yeah, barring an injury, Connor, I don't see the pathway for Luisangel Acuna being the starting second baseman to open the season. Now, to your point, if McNeil gets off to a very tough start and Acuna is in AAA Syracuse hitting, then that conversation is going to get louder and louder as the struggles happen up here and the success happens down here. I just don't see that pathway for Acuna to be the everyday guy. And as you mentioned, there still is that possibility that Pete Alonso departs the Mets. And if he does go to Toronto or the Angels or the Reds or whatever team we want to say, he goes somewhere that's not the Mets. You're going to have Vientos likely spending most of the time at first base, guy like Beatty at third base. Do you also want to bench a veteran like McNeil to put Acuna at second base? That to me is very risky, especially coming off of the heels of signing someone like Juan Soto. I think it makes sense to give Jeff McNeil the shot to start the season, and then of course be prepared to adjust as you go, whether that is an Acuna, whether that is someone like Jet Williams as we move throughout the season. The Mets are going to have some options, and Ronnie Mauricio, I think we'll talk about here in a minute. So that's another guy that can get some consideration. I think that ultimately is just putting pressure on McNeil to perform early.
Yeah, I think something that evaluators, front office staff, and coaches in the sport look at differently sometimes is they understand the floor with young players.
Yes.
I mean, Luisangel Acuna doesn't turn 23 until March. He was awesome when he came up last year. There's also a world where he starts off the season raging hot. And then there's a time in June where the OPS could be under 500 for a month. Young players, like they're volatile. They're learning on the fly. The jump through the minor leagues and then to the major leagues, the way guys adjust to you is just a totally different rate. So I think that is why, maybe, to the chagrin sometimes of fans, veteran, whether it's coaches, once again, GMs, lean on veteran players is they think there's a floor there that they're comfortable with the team. They like knowing what's going to happen. And I think it doesn't mean the Mets aren't interested in Acuna long-term being a major part of this team. I'm sure they are. They're almost protecting him from himself at times as well with that, where it's, hey, if we don't have to throw a kid into this spot to be a savior, then so be it. Because how many times, Joe, do you see that strategy unfortunately not work out? We saw it 2 years ago with Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty once upon a time as well. And Mark Vientos wasn't really given a fair shake, but once again, he was not put into a position to succeed when he first got called up here.
If you go back to 2024, you just named a couple guys. Francisco Alvarez had such peaks and valleys, which is very standard for a young player. You had the other side of the coin. Mark Vientos was wildly consistent, which is why I think so many people believe that everything from 2024 is real and repeatable, because he did it consistently throughout the season from when he actually got the opportunity. And then when he went to the playoffs, he performed under the brightest lights humanly possible. So those are kind of the two ways it can work out. And I totally agree with you when it comes to the floor versus ceiling conversation. And when you look at a veteran player, I know McNeil is unfortunately someone that Mets fans kind of have the target on his back at this point. We hear about it all the time of people wanting to get rid of the guy. I think the Mets and teams believe someone like Jeff McNeil is less likely to have that elongated cold stretch where maybe it's a week or two rather than 4 weeks, 5 weeks that could happen to a younger player more likely.